I know what you're thinking. What in the gosh darn is Bits and Bombs? Bits and Bombs is a podcast deep diving into what it takes to do stand-up from a different comedian every episode. Follow new open micer Peter Doms in his journey to be an okay comic.
Aaron Gocs, otherwise known as, a lot of people refer to you as Gocsy. Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So when did you first start comedy?
It was around 2008.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So about
The dates are a little bit hazy because it's a long time ago. But I tend to use that as my day because I think there was like one spot I did a year before, '07, so I don't really count.
Yeah.
You know, the raw comedy, I went and...
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, had a few jokes and then didn't progress and I just left it.
Oh, yeah, fair.
So I think it'd be unfair to say '07 when I just dipped my toe in and didn't really go in.
I
so
feel,
yeah. Oh wait, I use.
I feel like it's super common for people to, dip their toe in a little bit, do one or two gigs, and then maybe wait a year or two before they go back and consistently stick to gigging. I feel like that's quite a common thing.
Yeah, well, I feel like, and during that time, it's probably like, do I really want to? Like doubting there's a lot of self-doubt.
Yeah.
And plus, like I said, it was just a few jokes floating around in my head. And then in that following, I thought, well, I'll try and write it a bit better. And
yeah. So you come back a year later, like with the same some of the same jokes, and just rewrote them.
Yeah, I think so. Then a few more, and they were still pretty bad. But yeah, a few more jokes. And
yeah.
That first spot was really bad, and then the second year, yeah, a bit better.
Yeah. So from there, what do you remember? Like your second gig, or like your second gig back, I guess, after that year break.
Yeah, I do. It was quite memorable because I think the first one I just showed up, didn't tell anyone, and then the second time I told some people. So it was like, as tends to be at these sort of things, early on, people get a lot of the support, friends and family and stuff. And it quickly dies off. But it's like it's a novelty. It's like, oh, he's doing stand up, and then when they know you're just doing it, no one comes.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. And like, so the first time you did it, you didn't tell anyone, and you said there was a lot of self-doubt when you first did it. Do you think you came back with a bit more confidence to tell your family and friends to come check it out?
Yeah, I think so. Because there's so much unknown in that first one of like, oh, what's it gonna be like? And then when you've got better, you think your jokes are better and that too, it helps a bit more confident. Like, come and watch me. Yeah, if you're like proud of yourself,
And so you've been doing comedy for 15 years now. How much has the Australian scene changed, do you feel?
Yeah, I think it has a lot. Absolutely. Like, obviously, there's a lot of influence from people sort of watching specials and I mean other acts they see in Australia, but particularly like internationals. Like, I've noticed people really following closely like new releases and what's happening in the industry around the world and that.
Yeah. I feel like things like Netflix definitely brought specials to the front line for sure.
And even just more gigs, like that's like a very simple, basic thing, but it's a lot more gigs now.
There's a lot more gigs now.
Yeah. When I started, there was hardly any. I remember like, and also, it's an obvious thing. Is like, when they say like, make things happen, do it yourself, but no one really. We just kind of went with the existing model, the gigs that were there, and then gradually, people's like, oh, I can do this, And some people started to put their own sort of independent ones up gradually. Yeah.
So, So with a lot less, were there many people running their own rooms back when you started?
No, not at all. That's what I was, so like here in Brisbane, Sit Down, or like one of the companies, there's pretty much mainly them. There might have been the odd one pop up. But yeah, mainly them. And then that's what I'm saying, like, people just followed the process of like, if you want a gig, you got to go through them, and then some newer ones started popping up, and then there's a lot more now. I just said to someone the other day about how I've noticed, and also the model is changing a bit, where there's these ones that are like a bit more of a permanent comedy club, because the structure for a long time was you show up to a pub for the night, set it up, pull it down. You know, it's just it's just comedy's on there for 2 or 3 hours. But now there's these purpose-built ones.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've noticed there's a lot more rooms that kind of have a bit more of a permanent stay in those venues, like pubs and stuff.
I mean, it's a big commitment, but it's good they do that, because it's like showing that it's a legitimate art form. It is art, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess like there's a lot of different like rooms and stuff that have become their own brand, like things like Brown Snake and stuff, where they run multiple venues.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's really cool for that. A lot of comedians are taking on, like, I guess the more business side, but also setting up more gigs for other comedians too.
Yeah, and I know it sounds a bit lame, a bit cheesy, but you gotta like kind of teach a city about the culture of comedy and stuff. You know, like all these sounds silly, but it's true, because it's like even like this the setup of like there's a host and there's a few acts and then there's a headline at the end, and then you've got the try out your material nights, open mics, and teaching everyone how this all works. Like, okay, if you're at this open mic night, it's going to be a bit rough, you know. And I feel like, you know, places like Melbourne, where it's a bit been going a little bit longer, they're a bit more used to that, where they know it's going to be a bit rough if it's an open mic night, and they accept that. They're not like, oh, this sucks, because everyone's trying new stuff.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool though too, because we have a lot of like established comedians coming through, like people have been doing it for years, doing open mic nights as well. So there's a good mix of like tenure there.
Yeah. You just go from wherever you want to go. I'm happy.
Yeah, easy.
If you need to do any again,
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, sorry the camera cut out because good old technical difficulties.
It's all right. I know them well.
But yeah, so we were talking about like permanent comedy clubs and people like doing their own like rooms and stuff, and how it's more prominent now.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say is which is again, I'm not saying this has never been around or anything. I'm sure there was way back in the day, but some like sort of more creative night gigs and stuff where they're like, oh, you can be a bit more creative than your standard stand-up comedy and stuff too. Like, those things are good, I think. Alternative comedy, as they say, yeah.
Yeah. So like probably things like roast battles and different like themes like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's some where they let you like make some characters and things up, character comedy and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, sweet. So you've done stand up for a while, for 15 years. Where along the, and you've seemed to like branch into different forms of comedy too, like online content and skits and stuff. So whenabouts did that type of stuff start for you?
Yeah, well, I think so like stand up, a lot of people, and I'm the same, will go into it because it's quite a low entry point where you just like find out a gig's on and ask if you can be on it, you know, sort of like open mics and stuff. Whereas if you like sort of comedy acting, that's a bit daunting. Like, oh, do I have to study it? Or so I always thought, even though I grew up loving like movies and TV a lot more than stand up, it just seemed like a world away from me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to be a like comedy actor. I don't know how to really go about that. Whereas I do like stand up, but yeah, I just went in. So yeah, I'd just doing stand up for years, not really investigating it at all, and then like sometimes you're like, because it's a bit like daunting, like I said, like how do I, you know, like it's how do I film stuff if it's just me, you know, you need to know people who are doing it.
Yeah. And
years ago, was a guy, another comedian I knew in local scene, and he was filming some skits and got a few of us to be in them, so that was a good sort of his name was Chris Gracie, and then he got a few of us comedians to be in some of his skits, which is a good sort of starting point. And so along the way, I'm doing a lot of these gigs, just keeping at it, but it was hard to be motivated because there's not a lot of interest. Just some of these gigs very tough. There's only a few people there, and they don't always even want to be there. Some of these gigs where they're just in a pub where they just put it on. Anyway, so yeah, I was doing all those gigs, and I was whinging a bit too. I'm like, nothing, complaining about things like, when do we get our break? And then it become like sort of put up or shut up in the way that you've got to make things happen yourself. So yeah, I started putting up some things myself using the socials like the Facebook and Insta and stuff. Like photos, videos, and because it's a good way to try and get it out.
Yeah, like and it probably showed that like it's not always reliant on having the fanciest gear. Like some of your biggest stuff was just like a webcam video.
Yeah, very rough. Yeah, and I think that's what put me off, was like in my mind thinking it has to be well produced, and then I was holding off like, how am I going to find people to work with? How am I going to? And then just become okay, I'll try this, and because I feel like I'm in that age group where I'm not like super old where they're fully scared of tech, but also not like the younger crowd who are like really switched on.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got 2 daughters and they're great with everything tech, like, and then I'm in between where I'm not fully bad, but I'm a little bit like, don't know what I'm doing with a lot of stuff. So even like a webcam, which is pretty basic, freaked me out a bit. Then I just looked into it and like, you just switch it on, record. But yeah, like you said, very rough. I think some of my early ones, like you can see me like switching it off, and like, and like people have told me, I don't like to talk about my own stuff, but they've told me that was like the charm of it was.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because it's this, I feel like there is out there is a lot of perfectly polished stuff. So if you want that, it's out there.
Yeah.
So if you like something a little bit rougher, you can find that too. Like.
And like especially like the video of you like talking about like classic stitch up and like a day after like finishing work and stuff kind of gives a very authentic like I've just finished work for the day like kind of thing.
Yeah, because I was obviously like wasn't getting any money from comedy, so I was just doing labouring and whatever work I could to get by. I'm not qualified or anything, so. You get these super boring days of work, but then I thought, I'll talk about something that happened, and people seem to like that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, it was a good starting point. And then it was like, but it was a bit daunting again because it's like, all right, now people are looking at me and watching, and that's what freaked me out a bit. It was like you go from like no one cares what you're doing, like I said, 6, 7 people at these gigs, whatever, and now it's like people are watching you. It's like it's a big change.
Yeah.
Huge, is like, but also it's like I feel like that sort of like is like a kind of like an apprenticeship where it's like toughened me up a bit. Those whatever it was, 8, 9, 10 years, a long time, 7, 8 years or something of just playing to hardly anyone in little pubs.
So was it about 7 or 8 years before you started to do the online content?
Yeah. So first after that initial raw was still very sporadic gigs, just like one open mics here and there for 2 or 3 years. Then I started trying to like get more into it, work harder on the acts for a couple of years. Then I was like, and that was all in Brisbane, and then I started trying to like tour interstate, go to some different gigs down south and that. So that was another like stepping point. That's probably like 5 or 6 years into it.
Yeah. I remember you seeing you come through. Like I'm from Mackay. I remember seeing you come through there.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's always in anything. That's the next progression of like hometown to taking it to different places, and that gives you a bit of a push along because it's like, oh, cool. Bigger cities. There's more people at the gigs and bigger acts and stuff, and. And they were like, some of them were liking what I was doing, which is a nice little motivational thing where it's like, oh, okay, there's something in this. Even though you do, obviously, people do the modesty thing, but at the end of the day, most of us believe in what we're doing, or we wouldn't be, I know it's easy to go, oh, shucks, I guess I'm all right. But I think everyone knows that they think they're good or whatever. So it's like, yeah, that's reassuring. I went down to Melbourne, and there's people from like TV, radio, whatever, like all the sort of established acts, and then some of them, it was nice. They'd say to me, "Oh, I like your act," or "You got something in there," and made me want to work on it more.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and I started going like to comedy festival shows here, Brisbane Comedy Fest, and you'd see some of the acts come up from Sydney and Melbourne, do like a full hour show, which is cool. That motivated me a lot, where it's like, because I was very caught up. When you're in a little scene, you can be caught up in that little bubble.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was like, because we're all doing, people on the same level as me, doing 5-minute spots, which for people who don't follow comedy, that sounds like a small amount of time, but when you're starting out, it's a fair amount of time, And I'm looking around like, oh, my fire's better. I'm talking about whinging and stuff. I'm like, my fire's better than him. Why is he getting gigs? And it's a very low bar. And seeing those things like a full solo festival show is like, oh, that's a world I want to be in, make new aims, instead of just like trying to have the best 5-minute spot in a little scene,
Yeah. When did you start doing when did you do your first hour show?
So that was after the stuff started doing well online. That was when like, all right, I've got a bit of a following. I've got to try and sort of market this, ticket it, monetize it, whatever you want to call it. And then I started to put on shows. Thankfully, by then, like I said, it had been so many years that I did have a lot of material. It was just packaging it together and also the big step up from before to pretty much double that, because before I'd only done 20, 30-minute spots, and now I'm going to a full hour.
Yeah.
So it's a big step up.
Yeah, that's a massive step up. Even like, as you said, like 5 minutes, like a lot of people are like, oh, is that all you get? But like when you start out, that's a lot of time. And
depending on your style, like if storytellers, it can be 1 or 2 stories. I was very short, sharp jokes at first. So that was 5 minutes could be 8, 9 jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that was the next step, was like, all right, people are watching this now. They're into it. How do I get them to come along and go to shows? It was a really exciting time to go from like playing to barely anyone to like a lot of people,
Yeah, and at least, and I think now with the way that online stuff works is that people can get a following so quickly before they've developed their style and developed jokes. So it's kind of, I can imagine, it'd be really daunting for people to do stand-up for like, their first few gigs in. They already have people wanting to show up for them. So at least that you like spent the years, put in the hard work doing your jokes, writing the material, and then by the time that you had an audience, like that you built an audience online, you were ready because you had the material there. Yeah,
that's right. I definitely knew that was going on, where there was people putting videos out online and then putting on live shows who didn't have that sort of apprenticeship, I call it. It's not an official apprenticeship, it's unofficial. But yeah, I felt like I was in a good space of where I had the act to back up. I didn't feel like, I shouldn't say ripping off, but you can sell a ticket, and if you've got a lot of padding, an hour show, you don't have much to say. But yeah, I felt like I had that there, which is good.
Yeah.
And so it was nice when people were like, oh, I saw your video, I saw you having a show, I came along, I didn't know what to expect, and I enjoyed the show. So that was good when people get that feedback,
Yeah, and sometimes I think with online creators, like, people might not expect it to be stand-up, if that makes sense, because they don't always assume that you're a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. And some of those people they'll have things on a screen and songs, and it's not all pure stand-up, but mine was pure stand-up. So, yeah, there was people, bit of shock about, didn't know what to expect, and surprised it was just all stand-up. And also, like, might have been some wondering, why didn't you do the things from the clips and that?
Yeah, like reenact them on stage.
It was a funny time because it was like a lot of different types of people too coming, and some wanting, they kind of make you know, they just see the surface stuff of like what you look like and expect a certain person, and
And I think it's quite amazing, like, with online creators, they are introducing people to go to stand-up. Because a lot of people that follow online creators might not necessarily ever have been to a stand-up show.
yeah,
So it's really cool to have people being brought into it for the first time.
Yeah.
And then from there, they'll go to more clubs and...
and sometimes they get like like a stand-up as a support act or something, and it introduces people to some other people too. Yeah. It's
Yep.
good.
So how many shows have you done now?
Oh, heaps. Nah. Well, oh, do you mean like?
Like our kind of shows?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought you meant
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, how many gigs have you
like
done?
because some people count their gigs. I've never done.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, oh, that's my 800th gig or whatever. That's intense. Sorry. Yeah. So, had first one. Oh, and sorry. So the first time I went to Melbourne Comedy Fest was with my friend Angus Gordon. We did a split show. So that was first time, like half an hour each. Then I did another solo one and a second one. Yeah, so I've done like 2 festival solo shows.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
And then, yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of different material and stuff. And then a lot of touring around and just doing comedy clubs and solo shows. I do a lot of like where it's just me doing a show.
Yeah.
Where like I'm the only one on, so but not part of a festival or anything, just
Yeah,
show
cool.
up at a town. Yeah.
Yeah. Like regional places especially would love that. Like they don't get like comedy come through.
Yeah.
Like so I feel like they're like an untapped like they're a really good one to focus on. I've seen that you do focus on the regional towns.
Yeah, I'd like to do a lot more. It's something I'm looking into, but so far I've only done mostly bigger cities. I'd like to do some smaller towns as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be great when you get in there and you're the only thing on in the whole place.
Yeah.
And they're stoked so you came. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So with joke writing, do you find, so you've been doing it for so many years, do you find sometimes you'll go through like lulls of not being able to write anything for a little while?
Yeah, definitely. Especially a lot of my stuff is like actual stuff that's happened to me. Which sounds super lazy. I've never been like sit down with a book but why I like to do that is because I'm just telling you like and it's not just word for word what happened. It's like put your own twist on it. But I've always I like that because yeah, it's like giving people an insight into this is happening in my life and
Yeah.
And you live it too. Like if you live it, it's like people know you're genuine. You're not just putting it on, you know.
Yeah, and like that word for word thing, you don't need to be, it's not like you're reading a script. You can kind of, every show you can do it a bit differently because you're just retelling something that happened
exactly.
to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. With, so back to the online stuff.
Yeah.
So you have a Hot Dad Productions. Is that something you run?
It's a group I work with. I have worked with a lot. They're based in Melbourne. They're all ex stand-ups as well, so which is cool. So there's 3 of them. There's the core group: Jay Morrissey, Lisa Feinberg, and John Campbell, and they write, produce, direct, and then they have all their like camera people and stuff that they trust and use, and which is cool. You get to know them and that, and but yeah. So when I first moved, when things were starting to go well with the online, I moved down to Melbourne, and that was, like I said, that was my dream, was like acting and being in comedy stuff. So they would make skits for me to be in and stuff. So yeah, it was that was exciting for me, and I feel like we worked well together. Yeah. But I'm not. It's like a group. I'm not really like a member of, but they make a lot of stuff that I've been in, and yeah. But I think the actual group is like the 3 of them. Yeah, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Weren't you working on a TV show with them last year?
So we did a series for it it was online only for Comedy Central, like the Australian branch,
Yeah.
which unfortunately it sort of fizzled out. You know, you can get into it. It's the politics of like, you know, a big American company comes here. This is how I see it. They're probably shocked at the number difference, right? Like ratings. You're like, in America, they probably have millions watching anything.
Yeah.
And we've only got 20 million people here, and comedy is niche. So there's probably 10,000 watching or whatever, you know, and they're just like, this is bombed. And yeah, it's hard to explain. I'm like, no, that's pretty good for here, you know? Like,
yeah.
Like, I was stoked. I'm like, 10,000 watching, like, sick, you know?
Yeah.
But it was cool. Like, so we did, like, I know nostalgia's a bit of an easy thing to dip into, but we did old, like, 90s series, redid them. And
Yeah.
so I had, like, Blue Healers and Heartbreak High and stuff.
And like Ocean Girl and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. It was really fun. It was like, you know, and like, I'm the face of this series. It was exciting. And then, did quite a lot of stuff with them for like Vice and stuff too.
Yeah, I've seen some of your... So was that run through them as well, the Vice docos?
Yeah, and it's kind of a lot of it's, they call it branded content, which is like an ad basically, where the company will pay and then they get their product in placement and stuff.
Yeah, so you got to go to like the Maxibon factory
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like
So
that.
yeah, there was quite a lot of that stuff. And then there was a bit of a tough period where sometimes you like, you know, that was like I was getting offers for things at first, then it died down a little bit, and then COVID was pretty tough as well.
Yeah.
So it's been like, you know, it was a tough few years, but there's a thing they're just finishing it off now that we did with them called Emu Wars.
Yeah, I
So
saw some of this behind the scenes stuff as it was
we're
happening.
hoping it'll be out soon. It's been a very long process. Like I filmed my bits March last year,
Yeah.
and now it's May the next year. So it's like we're still waiting for it to come out.
Yeah.
So that's how things go. They can be a slow process, but that's really exciting. That was a cool thing to do, you know. I'm like working with emu puppets, and the funny thing is too, there's like a rival one. Well, there's not rival in terms of, because the other one's like a big budget American one.
Yeah.
And it's an emu war as well, but we're kind of like voodoo dolling it, hoping.
Is the American one like a comedy as well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, just way different budgets. They're like big budget. We're like independent, small or whatever. Yeah, but just doing our best. Like, you know.
And how was like how did you? So you said like doing like acting and stuff was a bit daunting. How did you find going from doing like comedy stuff like in front of your webcam to then doing like productions?
Yeah, well, like, you know what I was saying, where at first with the webcams, there's no, you're not thinking anyone's really going to see this apart from a few like sort of niche diehard followers, you know? And so there's no kind of, you don't overthink it because it's like, who's going to see it? And then you can't help it when, you know, there's a lot more people watching, you can't help but think like, sort of doubt yourself a bit, overly think stuff, so... Bit of that, bit of doubt, overly thinking things, but it's cool as well because it's like this. It legitimizes it, if you know what I mean, you know. And I remember I'd been at it for so long, and it's always like, oh, you know, this is a hobby. You always just see it as a hobby, and I don't know, I'm sure parents are thinking, "What? When's he gonna give this up?" And you know, 'cause like you're an adult now, like. That was a cool thing too, when things are going well, like just show my parents it's a legit pursuit, you know? Like I remember had this show and my dad helped me on the door, and it's like one of the, you know, I'm sure he was like proud, you know, because it's like could see this big line of people waiting to come in, and it's like, that's my son, you know, he's not useless. Because, you know, it is things like that. I think everyone wants to feel useful, right? And I hadn't been good at many things in life, and I was like, this is something I can do pretty well, you know, that felt good. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. You seem to be someone that pops up everywhere. Like you're on Triple J the other week as well, doing like a version.
Yeah, you just have to, man. Like, just got to keep at it. The nature of it is just, people forget who you are, you know, or it's competitive. There's a lot of people doing it. So I've always I try to use the work ethic of like coming from that labouring background of like, yeah, if I had to go out all day, dig all day or whatever it was, the equivalent is like, I'd much rather put in a work ethic for something I love and enjoy. But yeah, just got to try and I realize it's like if someone's not into you, it can be annoying. But it's like that I'm popping up everywhere. But it's like stuff, and you just got to. I get that where I get comments with people going like, give it a rest and like. Yeah, but it's just you gotta. It does hit me a bit, but it's also like. I want to do this. I've got it. It's the nature of it. You got to, unless. I feel like there's always anomalies. There's someone like these like genius people who can just come out, pop up when the festivals are on or whatever. But I feel like most people have to stay in people's face or like keep at it. But yeah, like talking about like music things, like I've got a lot of support. I'm very thankful over the years from like bands and stuff from the music industry, and that was awesome. That Triple J thing, I got asked to be in that, which is great. That was like one of my life highlights.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was funny because I was telling people, a few close people to me about it. I'm like, oh man, that's so excited. I'm going to be on like a version. But I don't think I explained it properly, or I didn't say that I was singing. And then it came around when it was on, and I get messages going, oh, you didn't tell me you meant singing. Like, I'm thinking, well, I didn't. But then what did they think? I'm like, maybe they thought with a tambourine or like some simple instrument or just dancing or whatever. But like, yeah, it was certainly a very interesting and fun and great experience.
Yeah, because you've also done things like music videos before.
Yeah, that was one of the first things with the music industry I did, was getting asked to be in some videos. That was really exciting. Being a huge fan growing up of music videos, I used to like Rage on ABC.
Yeah,
I'd like wake up in the middle of the night when I was a young fella. I remember we had a 2-story house, and I put my alarm on because you know how it went all through the night, and they'd have like the chart songs in the morning, but through the night was the more what's the word, like
alternative?
Yeah. Some of like swearing,
like,
drugs,
like
sex.
Ramstein, and stuff like that. Yeah,
and I'd put the alarm on, wake up middle of the night, so it's like everything's dark, and I was like, I remember being a young fella, and I was a bit scared. It's like, the house is dark, and there was some like freaky videos on and stuff. Yeah, so it freaked me out a bit, but I loved it. I was like, always had this bit of from an early age weirder taste in, not trying to be like, oh, I listen to bands that no one's heard of or anything. It wasn't like it was Triple J or whatever, but when you're like 11 or 12-year-old kid, like that's pretty, and everyone else is into like Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls. It's like, I was ahead of the curve. But yeah, really, that was really great, and done some touring with bands, which is awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
And that's very interesting dynamic of like to go from comedy clubs where generally it's all set up to be conducive for comedy, where there's seating and audio and everything, and then multiple acts and all that, to like music shows where it's not at all. Like everyone's cramped in a like mosh pit basically. No seating, all this. It's not conducive, but it was still fun. But very, there was some tough where like didn't get any laughs at all, and
back to like the talking about hosts and stuff. I can imagine. So you're doing stand up, obviously, like on these tours, and like doing like an MC kind of role for these bands.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because the bands asked me, obviously, and I'm stoked. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. And then it becomes like, all right, how are we? Because they just wanted me on. They didn't really have a plan of like, how am I going to be used? And so we discussed it, and it was like, well, I've got these jokes. Is that what the audience wants? Or I'm thinking maybe I'll be a bit more like a hype man. How's everyone? But the thing about that is there's only so much time you can kill with that. Like, so I'll be out there like, hey, how's everyone doing? Having a good day? And they're like, yeah. And like, all right, That's 20 seconds killed. Like, now I've got to like, yeah. So like, I don't chuck some jokes in, which like I said, everyone's like, you know what a mosh pit, it's like cramped in. And I know it sounds like I'm blaming the standing, but there's a bit of truth in that. I'm also like, I know when I've got to, I was like very, what do you call it? Like accepting about it, where I'm like, I've got to get better as well. I've got to write better stuff. But it is brutal when there's like long periods of time with no laughter, because comedians, we use that feedback and laughter to, it's reciprocal, it's like, oh, they're laughing, they like it, I'm going to try and do better. And yeah, I had some really really memorable ones that are like really tough. And then there's like demographics, age groups. I had this one tour with the band Lime Cordiale. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
And it was like they were like all ages shows.
Oh, okay.
So like some like teenage kids, and I'm like double their age, talking about being a dad and Hungry Jacks and stuff. And it's like, yeah, they weren't into it at all. But it's conflicting memories, because like stoked that they asked me to go on it, but pretty tough shows.
Yeah.
And had this uni show, Melbourne Uni, and I was like no laughs the whole time. Then the band comes on next, and it's like, oh, you can't even blame the audience. Oh, they just don't want to have a good time. Then the band comes off and they're going off, moshing to the band. So it's like, maybe I've got to get better. Maybe I've got to more jokes for different demographics and stuff, which a lot of people talk about. People say, got to have some jokes ready if you go to a bowls club or a rugby club or depending where the show is,
Yeah. Yeah, it also comes down to like, the crowd has gone there expecting music, so it makes it's already a challenge because they're not there, like they don't have the expectation that there's going to be comedy there. Yeah. And I think
because you have shows where it's like, all right, I've got to win them over. Yeah. That's the one where you really got to work hard. And one of the great things about when the online stuff was doing well, and I'm selling tickets to people. Obviously, the selling of tickets is great. Here's some money, but it's also like they want to be there, which is awesome. It's like they've wanted to come. They're already on your side. So for 7 or 8 years before that, I've been doing purely, nearly always gigs where it's like, got to win them over. They don't know who I am. They're not into it. So it was this cool opposite to that of like, oh, they already like me. Yeah, it was just nice. Yeah.
What was the so back to the music videos, what was the first band that you did a music video for?
I think it was Skeggs. Did one called Got on My Skateboard. Yeah, and that was interesting because the band weren't actually there, and I didn't know much about them either. I knew like the style and that, but I didn't know any song. And I ended up going on tour with them, and they were like awesome dudes. And I started listening to the music, getting into it, and had a great time. But at the time of the clip, didn't know they weren't there. They sent their friends along to like film it, so it was interesting. And like, yeah, I was just being like followed around for the day and doing some stuff. It was fun, but yeah, that was like, this is cool, new experience. And I'm pretty sure that was the first one, or certainly for a bigger act. I think I had some smaller acts before that, but yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because one time I was at the band, like I was at Full Tilt last year, and I was up the front watching the deathcore band Thyders Murder, and I could just see you on the side just watching them. So I thought that was pretty funny. Just the well, there's Gocsy.
that's another side of where everything changed. So like for years I'd just been going to things as a punter, and then now I either am on the things, I can hang out backstage, or even some other times where bands I wasn't on, but they just got me there to hang out, and which is cool. Yeah, but I've done some really fun things with bands. One of the biggest years ago, Violent Soho, they're from Brisbane. So they do. They had these like Christmas shows at the big. So they're from Mansfield on the south side. They talk about being from there a lot, like Mansfield Pride or whatever. But Mansfield Tavern is this huge pub where back in the days of the glory days of Oz pub rock or whatever, In Excess and all that, when bands would do, they would have big concerts there. So they, these days they don't, but Violent Soho hired it out or whatever and put on their big Christmas shows there.
Oh, wow.
And it was I don't know exact numbers, but I'm thinking 3, 4, 5,000 or whatever. Thousands of people there, yeah. They got me to be Santa, so I dressed up as Santa.
Oh, wow.
And they had a certain percentage of ticket purchases won the chance to have a Santa photo, and the band were there sitting there as well. So it was cool. But again, a lot of these things are learning curves. They didn't really know exactly. There was 2 nights. The first night, they had me on doing my stand-up just before the band, and that didn't go down well because there'd been bands before, plus I think they'd been away for a while, so there was a big build-up of their back and stuff. And then you've all, what concerts are like, people drinking, substances, big build-up. So people just wanted them on, right? And here I am doing my jokes, and there's violent. There was a chant going Violent Soho or whatever, where they didn't want me on. So the second night I went on earlier, which went a lot better. So things like that, just a learning curve. But they're mixed emotions because I'm at this thing. It's an awesome event. I'm stoked to be there, but I don't like to be a person who's making people's night bad. So I'm it's conflicting feelings because I'm on trying my best. These people don't want me on. I want to do my time because I want to show that I'm professional So there's a lot of mixed emotions, yeah.
I think it's really cool that you've been able to, use stand-up and be able to utilize your love for live music and bands and stuff too.
Yeah, and it's cool because the bands are stoked, I feel because a lot of them are comedy fans too, and also it just breaks it up, I guess, where they can have a band opening anytime they want, and they're this is a bit different, this is cool. And I know some of them there's a few of them who have a little bucket list, want to do a little bit of comedy set or something,
Yep.
I've had a couple of them had some opening up for me and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. You did a show last year, Gocsy's Muck Around. You had one of the guys from Dune Rats on.
Yeah, the drummer BC. Yeah, he was really keen for a bucket list thing to give it a go. So that was cool. Fun. Yeah, and that was so Brisbane Comedy Fest. And they're your venue will be the Tivoli. So for many years it was a powerhouse, right? And Tivoli's the other side of town. But it's a historic building. I'm oh, awesome. And I was 99% sure in my head it wasn't the main theater, and it wasn't. But there was this little bit 1% were maybe, but they're no, you're out in the bar. There was a stage set up at the bar because it's ridiculous. The main theater's heaps of people, yeah. Yeah, but those things are really they're fun, there's a little bit of not literally pinch myself, but pinch yourself moments with to go from playing in front of no one from years to these huge rock shows.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people that are wanting to come up now in comedy?
Yeah, I guess just use whatever you can. Like I said, I use the socials, Facebook and all that, and that's not for everyone, but you find the thing that suits you and you try and use that. And also and again, I wouldn't know person by person if what their attitude and everything is. I know I was a person who was whinging and complaining about stuff, so that would be if you're someone like that thinking why aren't things happening, then maybe it's you could do more, maybe it's something you can do a bit more. There's things you can control and things you can't control. So for me, I didn't really know what I was doing tech wise, but I was making the effort to just try and put on a webcam or something.
Yeah.
or touring or whatever it is, or put on a gig, or so if you make that effort, and then at least like I put in as much as I could.
And if one thing doesn't work out, you can just try the next thing too.
Yeah. But if you gave it a go, you got to be happy with yourself for that. Yeah. Because like I tried to put on gigs, and they were bad. I'm not a good gig organizer, right? But that's what I'm saying. You got to find the thing that suits you. Yeah.
Yeah. Find your strengths.
Yeah.
And go from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else? Do you have anything else planned for the rest of this year coming up?
Not really. I'm hoping to tour, but I haven't got it sorted out yet. The ins and outs of getting venues and all that. But like I said, I'd love to try smaller towns, regional towns. I love the acting stuff, so I'd love to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Got a few things coming out. There's this series with Damien Power we did. There's the Emu thing. Hopefully comes out. There's talk of June, July, one of the J months.
Yeah, it's probably all the businessy stuff they're trying to sort out.
Well, that's I do a lot of acting, and there's the behind the scene. I leave that for them, but apparently there's editing, and then they color grading and all the nerdy stuff I don't really understand. But yeah, pretty much just trying to keep being a funny fella and keep it all rolling. And like you said, I know I can be annoying and pop up everywhere, but I just realized you've got to, because and for every people who say, there's some people who see every little thing and you can be annoying, but then there's others you could put up heaps of things and they only see the one, or because there's the nature of these. Look how many things we've got now, right? All the streaming. Yeah, that's another thing that's changed, is like you need a bit of timing and luck. So when I put up the things, and then everyone was on like Facebook at that point, you know, which now it's harder because it's a lot more spread. Like you don't know what to put it on, and
now it's like TikTok.
Yeah, I guess
and then 5 years ago it was probably more Instagram.
But so like that's the thing. Everyone's on TikTok, but I'm struggling to break through on that, because you've got to know of apparently a lot of those, like knowing what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, all the algorithms.
Yeah, and then apparently there's amounts of time, I think, how long it goes for, and you can be too long or too short, or hashtags and
yeah. But I think like you said, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that are like get stoked when they see you pop up and everything too. So
well, you know what you say about like, and I agree that like the, say my early stuff was rough or whatever, lo-fi, and then, but there's still that feeling of like, I want to be legit. I want to be like well produced, and I enjoy making things that are well produced. So, but there's always that doubt, like, oh, should I go back to a bit of a rougher approach, or especially like you just think like it's that like, or the audience wants something, but you want to do the thing you want to do as well. Is that finding that line between the two?
Yeah, definitely. Like you kind of like sometimes you might need to be a little bit conscious about trends.
Yeah.
But also put your own spin. So that, because if you're just doing stuff that other people want, you're not gonna put the passion.
Yeah, well, like I've had requests, people wanting do something like that again, and then that was a time and a place. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
And you're also working on a podcast at the moment. That's
just gonna be like this, like chats with people,
yarning,
get to know people, and same thing.
And what's that one called?
So it's basically called Have a Yarn with Me. Yeah.
And you got an intro, like an intro song done from one of the guys from the chats, right?
Yeah, Eamon, the singer. Yeah, I told him, so I sent him a message. I was like, can you do this for me? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I'm like, I've never like written lyrics, right? And I'm like, never written music, or not for anyone or anything. You know, stupid ones just for myself. And I'm like, oh, but it wasn't like it has to be this. It was like, oh, what do you know, this is a rough guy. What do you think? And he ended up just going with that. I'm like thinking he might mess around with it, change it around a bit. But he did use the ones I wrote. And then it was fun because it was like, I didn't really direct him too much. And in my mind, I was thinking it was going to be full band. It ended up being acoustic, which is cool.
Yeah.
It was different than what I thought. I thought it was going to do full band. But then I thought, well, that's pretty cool because it's like a bit more limited edition because he doesn't do a lot of like acoustic.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So that was cool, yeah. And got some really good artwork for it too, yeah. So, yeah, it's exciting, just different stuff. And
Yep.
Yeah.
Just keep doing different stuff and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We're quite we're lucky we've got these things, you know, where we can put them out.
Yeah, like even like when you started, like it was very limited.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you know how I was saying, some things can seem like, oh, that's not a world for me, and that back in the day, that's how you were made to feel. We're like TV, radio. That was just like off limits to someone like me, you know. And it probably kind of still is in a way, even though I'm going on like Triple J and stuff. But there's still, but anyway, but yeah, these internet things, they take the power away from the people in suits, don't they?
yeah, definitely. It puts the power to the audience.
Yeah, like because it doesn't. YouTube and stuff don't say, sorry, can't unless you like putting Nazi shit or whatever.
Yeah,
which is good, I think. Anyway, going into a deeper rabbit hole there with political stuff, but yeah, it's taking the power back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Actually, is today? I saw something online before you come over. Is today your birthday?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And it's Mother's Day as well.
Yeah.
Which that happens a few times in my life. So it's always second Sunday of May, I think, Mother's Day, yeah. And I'm 14th of May, so yeah, I have to share it with mums. I haven't seen my mum yet. I just dropped off that's why I was a bit late. I dropped off a present to my mum. And then I went and took a photo of myself in Red Rooster for myself. I just love doing these silly photos and yeah, but I like doing it. Yeah,
I love also, thanks for taking your time out of your birthday and
Mother's
Day.
Right.
I appreciate that. I wouldn't...
It's, a little... I'll give you a little industry, a little bit of a grim peek behind the whole, like... So I was talking to these, trying to get some help with what I do and stuff, and someone went through the person I'd been recommended to talk to. I won't say names or whatever, but... looks after talent agent or manager, whatever word you want. Anyway, they go through my pages, like Insta and all that. I think, like, it's a reality. They've got to be brutal. It's better to be brutal and honest. But like I said, I like to put up silly photos and things. But they were just like, photos means nothing. Because in terms of like, numbers
like
and stuff, like what can
stuff,
we use to like monetize this to brands and just like, that's what I mean. Like, but that's life, isn't it? Like, there's times when things are just blunt and brutal, and when it comes to money making and stuff. But I'm like, I like to do a silly photo of me in like a Red Rooster or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's just makes me feel good. Even though someone like that says something like that, I'm not going to stop just because they're like, oh, we can't monetize that.
Yeah, exactly. The photos are so funny because you've done a few different series of ones. Like I remember you did a like a Sanity one, like Sanities of Australia. So you're on tour.
The funny thing about them, they're silly. I admit they're stupid, and that's what they're meant to be. So like I said about people trolling and stuff, there's always like people have a bit of a sook about it. And it's like, man, it's meant to be silly.
Yeah.
But also, they take over my life too, because, for example, the Sanity one, it started as a silly thing. The very first one was Wagga Wagga, because we were filming there, and I legitimately didn't know they were still around, because they were huge for me as a young fella, Sanities. And I seen this one, and I just decided to just take a photo and call it like not expecting it to be a series. I just thought it'd be silly to go Sanities of Australia as if, but then it started to grow, and I'm like, every town I'm in, I'd Google it, see if there's one in this town, and unfortunately they've stopped now. But yeah, it took over my life because not in a bad way, but it was like, it's just like, you know, and like any addiction, you know, where it's like you got to do it and you don't know why or whatever. And I'm like, I'm in a town, I've got to find the sanity here.
Commitment to the bit.
Yeah, and I'd be like, sometimes I didn't have my car on me, so I'm like walking really far, or getting public transport just to get this pic. And they all look the same anyway. You could have lied about it. And so it was quite funny, but and it's one of those things that just took on a life of its own where people loved it, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, I guess. But yeah, I had a few guys. Another one where it was like well-known people or like musos or sports, but whatever. I'll do a photo of them, and I'll say this between us, you know.
Yeah,
but it's always the thing they do, and that's why I feel good because I'm like the butt of the joke, where it's like I'm making fun of myself that I haven't achieved what they achieved. Or, so those little things, they're fun, you know. Yeah. Again, it's talking back to that thing of like advice or anything. It's use whatever you can. So for me, it's like, you know, like say for example, Instagram. You've got a phone, right? You've got a camera on it. We're lucky these days, you know. We're like, you know, I know it's making me sound old, but recent generations, we're the first to have these things. Like easy, you know, you don't lug it around a big camera. It's just on your phone, and it's free to use these websites, right? Most of them. I know there's technicalities, like if you want a blue tick or whatever, who cares about that, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying is use these things as like the free, you know, most of us have a phone, right, with a camera. Yeah, so like, that's what I do, try and use. But then I do have that want to be properly produced and stuff. And because I think there's a bit of a discussion about that of like, okay, everyone's on TikTok and stuff now. Everyone's a filmmaker because everyone's making. How do we get that good quality movies and still being produced and stuff? Yeah.
But I think worrying about the quality of things can also just like hinder you ever actually doing something, like being like, oh, if I have a $3,000 camera, then I'll make these videos, or if I have a good like microphone, then I will do that. Yeah, rather than just jumping.
Well, that's what like I said, the early years for me, even though I grew up loving movies, comedy movies, and TV and all that. I didn't bother to look into it because it can seem so daunting. Like, oh, I can't do that, you know?
Yeah.
And then that's what was exciting when I did start to put stuff out. And it was and that for me was like, oh, all those years, this might sound lame, but like all those years, I was keeping myself a secret. I know it sounds like, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But because I made the effort to put on the webcam, write something, do it. So that was like, it made me realize all those years of like whinging and stuff. And I was just the one who wasn't putting anything out. Or,
Even like for me with this podcast, like I was worried about like getting like a proper studio, like all these like you can rent kind of thing. You can rent places, but I have a degree in the digital media stuff, so I already knew how to do it. So I was like, I just need to put something together myself.
Sometimes you need to chat to a few different people because there's different opinions and stuff, and about what they want out of whatever they're consuming, right? So, I have a friend who is a big podcast listener, and I wasn't. And I've never even consumed how many people do, you know, where they subscribe or whatever and get it. I've always been, I know this is probably a bad way to do it, but just listen to the odd ep off YouTube or something when I'm going to bed or in my car or whatever. But I talked to someone, my friend, who was more of a traditional consumer of podcasts. And it was like, well, what are things you notice about like the sound quality? And he'd say, like, oh, there's some that are a little bit rougher, and it can put you off a bit. So the main thing is like, I think you don't have to get like crystal clear, right?
Yeah.
But just make sure can be heard properly. There's not, I guess, like traffic or planes or people or whatever, and it's not tinny and it's not doesn't sound like it was done in a toilet or whatever, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So yes, you want a certain level of quality, but you don't need this ridiculous over the top, like whatever.
Yeah, like you don't
crystal clear.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need like a proper studio setup. Like this is just in my lounge
you want to
room,
be able
camera
to,
and stuff. Yeah.
as long as it can be heard properly. I found the main thing, the ones I've heard and enjoyed, is the discussion. You want, you know, and I like listening. It sounds obvious, but I like listening to topics I enjoy.
Yeah,
I don't like listening to something for the sake of it. You know, I'm not going to listen to cooking or whatever, you know, podcast or about something I don't like. You know, for me, it's usually about bands or sport or movies or something. You know, those topics I like. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the main takeaway we can get from this episode is like to just go out and do it. Just go out and like those things you're like, oh yeah, one day I'd like to do, like I'd like to make a YouTube video. Like just get your mates together and do it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, also you got to, you know, like think about this. Is this something that would you want to watch it yourself, right? Like, that's a good thing to ask yourself, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I did with this too. Like, I was like, I'm already having these conversations with comedians. I might as well just record it.
Yeah.
And I love, like, hearing, like, because you get a lot of, like, the American podcasts with, you know, they're talking about the process and things like that. But I don't think there's as many Australian podcasts, at least talking to the comedians that I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I think that about wraps it up. So, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. It's good to chat. I appreciate it, you know. Digging up some memories, and it's nice. Thanks.
Yeah, cheers.